Good to meet you guys.
We got John on now. We got Big Chris and or Cookie. I think were the two names we decided on last
I'll
time.
change my name because with so many Chris's, it feels like a power play. So.
Yeah, for the sake.
I respected it.
I mean, I will be the largest Chris. Like there'll be no doubt.
Listen, if we're doing populism, Big Chris wins the populist vote.
Wait, I can go for populist vote.
Was Dutch for cheers.
From the Real Politik podcast, you have myself, Paul Holden, and then our boy Chris the Plumber and John Barbera on the line.
How's it going, everybody?
What's up, guys?
And then here with
Happy to be here.
Beyond Binary Thinking, if y'all want to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I'm Cookie.
And I'm Chris.
So this is our second episode with y'all. So loved the first one. It was a ton of fun.
Loved the first one.
So much love. And I've been listening to more of your episodes as well. And I love your current episodes where you try and debate the worst system possible, but somehow it still seems better than our current system.
That's kind of what we're like, can it get worse? Well, it can always get worse, right?
Let's see how.
Yeah. No, wait. Actually, that's what I wanted to say earlier. So basically, to just get it fully started, that, in 1930s in Germany, they made the kind of same arguments of let's accelerate the system so we get to socialism. That's
How
literally
did
what
that
they
go,
did
by
for
the way?
Hitler.
No spoilers. I haven't seen the film yet.
Yeah, well, it didn't go too well, but that's literally the kind of thinking they had. I was like, yeah, we just get Hitler, crush the entire system, and then we build a better society. And all of these guys are now dead. I mean, they're all dead anyway, but they died a lot sooner.
Yeah, no, he made sure that there was nobody else left in power.
Yeah,
by
but
the
that
time
is,
he took
it's, I mean, I guess it's very much Godwin's law, but Hitler and Trump are insanely similar. It's really weird.
Well, but Trump is very lazy, and I don't think Hitler was ever that. He was that lazy?
No. This is the amazing thing that people get wrong about the Nazis. It might be like a German racism thing or something, but people assume the Nazis were this super competent, mega organized
industrious, coal power.
And Hitler was this.
Yeah,
and Hitler was
Germans.
This crazy, organized, disciplined guy. He was not. Hitler was a complete idiot that failed at life, and he just happened to stumble into power. Just that was all this. And the entire Nazi party, all losers, criminals, incompetent people. I think Goebbels, he was like a failed student and just happened to get in there by some magic.
He had the propaganda machine lined up. He knew he was kind of like who was the Fox News guy?
Tucker Carlson, you mean?
No, I'm thinking more like Roger Ailes.
Oh yeah, kind of.
He kind of was a Roger Ailes.
Yeah, there's an entire book written about Hitler that he was just obsessed with watching TV and about his own image. And all the policies he actually did was just the petty ones he cared about. For anything else, he had a couple of actual policy guys in the back that did all the actual work. But Hitler by itself was a really incompetent guy that didn't really do anything. The only reason he got into power was because Germany just fell apart. And then the conservatives tried to use him to maintain their own power. And that just backfired really hard.
So you're telling me acceleration is the wrong idea?
I mean, it's the right idea if you want to get us all killed, I suppose.
So my co-founder, I had to explain this theory to him because he had a messy lockdown breakup and then started with his new girlfriend, arguably too soon, but it's lockdown. Everything's on an accelerated timetable, right? And he was like, oh, we're going to move in together immediately. And I'm like, that's a really bad idea. And he goes, but better to find out now, right? The quicker we find out whether this is going to help, the better. And I'm like, that's how you break things. If cranking up the speed before the thing is built is how you break everything.
I tried that with my last girlfriend. I tried the same thing. Same logic, too.
Logic, right?
Yeah.
Like we haven't built the ride yet, but let's just turn it on and accelerate it as fast
Yeah.
as possible. We don't know where we want to go with it either, but let's just go. Let's just go anywhere better than here. Fuck.
Who was it? Facebook or Google that it was move fast and break things?
Well, that's every
like,
tech company now.
You did it.
Yes.
You moved fast and you broke everything.
That
Right,
is
I
the
think there's a
mantra
few-
of tech. That is
There are
totally
a few more collapsed companies at the bottom of that cliff than the ones that we are famous with survivorship bias, right?
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I am being a little convinced right now that maybe accelerationist isn't the right way to
but
go.
look,
about
guys,
it.
this is
I
just
guess-
Europe versus America, right? We're like, hey, steady. It takes a few hundred years to get the hang of things.
Yeah.
And they're like, we've got some brave new ideas. Ah, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's a fair point. You guys slow down. We're talking about hundreds of years, and we're talking about next quarter, baby. Next quarter, let's go.
My local pub is older than your country. Like, chill
Right,
out.
yeah.
Chill out.
I live in a house that's 1944, and everyone's like, "Oh shit!" I go over to Europe. They're like, that's a new house. That's a brand new house. Like, gosh, that's old.
Listen, you think I'm going to wait 4 years for Joe Biden to do something? I want it done within 100 days.
100 days,
or
baby.
I'm protesting.
Yeah, 100 days.
I mean, he might die in the first 100 days.
That's true. Yeah, we're going to get Kamala Harris as president.
This is the big synthesis I've come to, though, watching all the preparation for this episode, and the one I did last night, which was with a reformed Republican and Biden or bust guy who'd sort of like flipped his thinking, and they were having an interesting chat. And I think what it comes down to is that if all you think politics is voting once every 4 years, then you're right. Like that, voting for Biden now is a bullshit move that does nothing. Hopefully do more than just that, because that's not going to be enough.
What was this reformed Republican saying? If I'm allowed to, talk about another episode like this, I kind of feel like we're
confidential.
Is it the fourth wall? Is it the third ear?
It's a
I don't know
throwback
what we're.
so that people go back and listen to it.
Oh, we'll go back and listen to
Driving
you. There you
viewership.
go. There you go.
Yeah, you got to check it out. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like,
Is it kind of like
it's on my
have y'all heard-
OnlyFans.
Yeah, So the big one that I think about right now is the Lincoln Project. I don't know if they've made waves over in Europe, but it's a lot of these reformed Republican types that hate Trump. And they're like, well, I guess nobody was ever fundamentally serious about low taxes and low spending and, that kind of stuff. And so they've made some of the,
Well, it's true. The argument that conservatives are fiscally conservative doesn't really hold up to any basic scrutiny, does it? Like they tend to build up massive deficits.
No, they don't want to spend on social programs so that corporations can take over them. But if it comes to like the military, let's spend $500 billion immediately. But healthcare, fuck that.
So I think
public education.
No, lame.
Screw that.
Christian, partially because of mic issues and partially because I started singing the Lego song last episode, we skipped over the Steven Pinker's argument that the world is getting better because of capitalism. And I think we get so excited in our communist fervor that we don't give the devil his due. And I think maybe it's worth getting to that. Christian, what was the point that you wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper and a bit more nuance on?
Well, I mean, he isn't completely wrong. Like, Steven Pinker is an asshole, like, no question about it. But he isn't entirely wrong that the world got a lot better because of leftist movements. That's not what he says. But if you just look at 100 years ago, there was a guy like Bernie Sanders. He was called Eugene Debs.
Absolutely.
And he also ran for president. And he was thrown into prison, had to run his campaign from prison. Right. And the reason he was in prison was because he criticized U.S. foreign policy.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like, think of nowadays that Bernie Sanders gets thrown in prison because he criticized George Bush or something utterly insane. And
it's hard to imagine. Or the one that I think even more so than Bernie Sanders is Mike Gravel. Like Mike Gravel has said, what for me is some completely crazy shit, and I love it. I absolutely love me some Mike Gravel.
I have to inject the Mike Gravel video though. Have you all seen the one of him throwing a rock?
No.
This was back when he was running for president against
It was Obama.
Obama.
Yeah, it was 08. Mike Gravel, just this super old guy from Alaska. One of his campaign videos was just him staring into a camera next to a lake for like 5 straight minutes. And then he picks up a rock, throws it in the lake, and then walks away. And the camera keeps recording for 5 more minutes.
This is a national ad buy. This was a national ad buy.
I'm assuming there was voiceover, or was it just the video?
Nothing.
Just the video.
A sexual metaphor.
Yeah.
They'll get it. They'll get it. They'll get it.
So just to give for our listeners who don't know who Mike Gravel is, back in the 70s, he read every page of the Pentagon Papers on the floor of the House of Representatives.
Nice.
So kind of an interesting guy, but he's completely nuts. He would be, back in the old days, he would have been thrown in jail. Like, he would be in jail every year, even as a representative.
Yeah, so is the premise that this sort of, I guess, move towards allowing free speech and dissent a byproduct of capitalism?
Oh, no, not at all.
Oh, okay.
The exact opposite. No. So what you have to understand, I mean, this is like US history. But, so, technically the First Amendment, free speech, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't actually implemented, or like, it was written on paper, but it wasn't actually there for until, like, let's say 1950s or 40s.
Yeah.
For the simple reason that, like, if you criticized a US president, for example, then they would just throw you in jail for like something sedition or something. Mm-hmm. I'm not exactly sure for the reasons, but the US government could throw you into prison for just criticizing the government. And they did that really often. Any left-wing movement, any kind of trade unionist, they ever sent you to prison, they sent in the cops to beat you up, or they just fucked up your life. One of these reasons, maybe a combination of them. The only reason that stopped is because of a massive labor movement that just demanded a proper implementation of the law.
Right.
And yeah, it's just a left-wing movement actually created free speech in the US, which is why it's really funny nowadays when you have like right-wing losers that talk about the free speech thing as a thing of the right, when the entire labor movement of the left just created free speech in the first place. That if the right was in power, you could still throw people like Bernie Sanders or AOC in prison for criticizing the president.
Right.
And that's just absolutely insane. And that's like a really measurable thing that got better over the last 100 years.
Now, the cops will still beat you up here in America, but you'll get thrown into prison a lot less often.
Yes. But I'd say the government can't legally throw you into prison.
Yeah.
Well,
or like they can, but they have to find some bullshit reason at the very least.
And now, at least I think about the left in the United States, it's, the ACLU in the 60s defended Nazis marching in the streets of Chicago and Indiana. I can't imagine the ACLU. And the reason that they did it was to protect other minority speeches, right? It wasn't about protecting Nazis.
Yeah, it was a Trojan horse, right? A clever way to make your case. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it was about protecting people much closer to the ideals of the ACLU, but you had to also protect Nazis if you wanted to protect free speech. And so I can't imagine the typical Democratic Party today ever like defending the rights of Nazis to march.
Well, it's cancel culture now, right?
And I believe the ACLU has actually come out sort of reversing that old traditional position of the ACLU.
Is someone trying to cancel the ACLU for like sharing the link? The ACLU in allied with Nazis. Here's a link.
Right.
We need to cancel them.
Right. Kind of. Yeah.
Guys,
exactly.
The free speech thing's been done to death. I think I used to defend free speech as a free speech fundamentalist, and then you meet what some of the people want to say online, and you're like, oh god, yeah, we need to clear this space out. That's fucking disgusting.
Just
shut
awful.
up.
Well, that's.
I mean, you just have to look at all the free speech people from like 10 years ago, like Sam Harris. Who else was there?
Right.
I think
like all
Peterson
the YouTubers is a free speech guy. Yeah.
They all became just right-wing lunatics, basically. Just crazy racist assholes. That's just I don't know. I don't understand why anybody's really following them. It's just
took me a while to get off Sam Harris. Sam Harris was the last habit I kicked. And if I'm honest, I still like sometimes drift towards Jordan Peterson. No, we mustn't. No. It's forbidden. The shame.
I can't listen to Canadians talk, so that's why I've never listened to Jordan Peterson. So I guess it's a little the United States in me, the supremacy, if I'm allowed to say that.
I mean, that's the really thing I don't understand, that people listen to Jordan Peterson and they actually think he's smart and they have like some weird respect for him. And like anything he says is fucking retarded. I just don't get it.
The Americans don't use that word. We've had a few American guests get in trouble.
We're going to have to put a big old bleep on that or we will get canceled.
I mean, just
the ACLU will be knocking at our door.
But not just in his opinions. It's just logically ridiculous. Like, here's this guy that talks about like fantasy dragons and Disney movies for 12-year-olds.
Anyone who wants,
sees like this massive propaganda campaign.
Forced monogamy has never had a threesome. So yeah, he lost me there, I'm afraid. Sorry, Jay.
Right.
Yeah, but no, when you read his book, it's like we should be more like lobsters, and it's like, what's wrong with you? Like, why? It's
dragons.
Wait, is that actually an argument?
Yes, and
Yeah.
I mean, you're
like
strawmanning
random
his
book.
positioning so hard you look like that female reporter from Channel 4 right now, Christian.
The guy wants us to be like crustaceans, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Lobsters
No,
are
it's
a
actually
key.
Claw and claw.
Lobsters are a key part of his ideology. You clearly haven't read him.
It's mostly based off the Society of Lobsters.
Yeah, mostly crustacean-based philosophy.
You can learn a lot from how they interact, okay?
Oh my God. Okay. Anyway, so Peterson's an asshole. Harris is an asshole.
So far, so easy.
All right.
Let's go a bit deeper. I want us to try and steelman capitalism.
Yes.
Can we do that?
Let's do it. Christian, you're the king, so you start us off.
On what exactly do you mean?
Steelman, like steelman versus strawman. So strawman is when someone mischaracterizes someone's opinion and here's the easy criticism we can use against it. It's a logical fallacy, right? And so when you steelman something, you do the opposite and you go, even if you don't believe this, I want you to give me your best argument for capitalism.
Oh God.
And also democracy, because at the moment, a lot of these debates are coming down to, but maybe democracy is the problem. And yeah, people are just like, it's just really hard to convince people. And this is my big problem with their argument. And like, I don't think you guys have ever tried to persuade, not you, I mean the internet, right? No one ever tries to persuade anyone that disagrees with them other than just shouting abuse at them. Mm-hmm. And then these people that have never, so firstly, like they've never had a job and they have economic theories. They've never been involved in politics and they have strong political theories. And they've never tried to persuade anyone. And they're now promoting the idea that it's just no use. You just can't persuade people. We just need a strong daddy figure to come in and tell all the naughty children to behave and make everything good, and that'll be fine. Yeah. And I hear this on the left and the right. I hear it in the last few episodes from you, gentlemen.
John knows about Daddy Dom, dude.
What?
Yeah, you need that Daddy Dom to come in and spank the bad children.
But I mean, the inherent, I guess the core argument that I always hear from very pro-capitalist folks, if I were to attempt to steelman it a bit, is that it is the least worst of the economic systems. So if you want a system where if you work hard, you may not get incredibly rich, but you do have a chance of making it and, paying for your family's food and house and moving your way up the ladder so that everyone has an equal chance and equal opportunity to rise in society. That's the argument I've heard since I was a child as I was being indoctrinated by our Catholics.
Yeah, well, and Christian, you said with the Steve Pinker argument, yes, but people on the left fighting for rights. But there's no doubt that, like, it's been the two things, right? You've had massive economic growth, and then you've had a backlash and needed to fight for rights. Like,
I mean, I guess the really important thing. So this is why I hate capitalism versus communism, or is capitalism good or bad? Nobody has any fucking clue what capitalism is or what it means. There's so many definitions of it. It's
Right.
You basically have two people arguing for two completely different systems. And we had that with Bernie Sanders. Sam, like, I want socialism, basically like Sweden or Denmark or one of the Scandinavian countries.
I think it was all of Scandinavia was what he was talking about.
Yeah, Scandinavia. And then those guys, the conservatives there were like, please don't talk about us like that. We're not free market guys. But then when you come back to the US and you go to a guy like Ben Shapiro, it's like, should we be like Scandinavia? And he's like, no, that's socialist. So like, what is actually socialism is just, nobody actually, there's no coherent definition of what it means. So any debate about it is just
meaningless. Yeah, every single one of these terms, liberal, progressive, left, right, socialist, communist, mean almost nothing at these points, right?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, that's the really annoying thing about, so this is an outcome of the Cold War, that the US considers itself capitalist and uses socialist as an insult. In Russia, it was the exact opposite. They consider themselves socialist and use capitalist as an insult. But neither of these countries ever were either capitalist or socialist.
Right.
Marxists even go that way. And
well,
it's
I remember,
really just propaganda. It's a completely meaningless term except for propaganda.
I remember first talking to a Polish friend when I went over to Europe, and they were telling me about, their parents would tell them, these stories of like the evil capitalists with giant teeth wanting to like come and steal the babies of all the Polish people. And I was like, that's funny because we heard those stories about communists. And then it was just like a back and forth, it was just like a form of control. You need an enemy, right? And who was the enemy for the United States? Oh, the evil communists, the evil socialists.
Godless communists.
Right, exact. Godless. And that was the key, right? Make sure they're godless.
One nation under God was not put into the Pledge of Allegiance until the Cold War in the 50s because we were trying to show, look, we have God, we're Christian, we're good people, and they're not. They're all. It's a constant attempt to make your enemies like the Satan, which is what everyone still does now. With your.
But the really important point is that neither of these countries were ever capitalist or socialist.
Right.
Like neither of these systems ever existed.
Well,
there's a really good book by Mariana Mazzucato. It's called The Entrepreneurial State. And she talks about a couple of main inventions that were made that are really important for us. So for example, we look at the iPhone, like the main capitalist good that really exists, or capitalist in quotation marks. Right. Literally every major technology in the iPhone was developed either by the Department of Energy or by the US military.
Right.
The entire reason we have Silicon Valley is because the US military has such a big funding for these technologies. And none of that has anything to do with free markets. This was very deliberate spending by the US government to create a high-tech sector. And that exists even today.
Economy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the US is like not a perfectly
Japan
controlled.
And Korea's electronics industry, right? They decided top down, we need this, let's make this.
Yeah, so LG, for example, used to be just, I think, a fishing company, and the South Korean government went them and just told them, it's like, you guys now make electronics, so put R&D into electronics. And that's for like literally any big company. Wherever you look, if there's a large enough company, they have massive support from the government.
Yeah.
And this is the exact opposite of capitalism. And the same, when you look at 10 years ago, 2008, like all the big banks failed, the entire system basically crashed. The government immediately steps in and just bails out pretty much all the big guys. And then if you're a single homeowner, then it's like, yeah, good luck, guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this has nothing to do with capitalism.
Yeah, the same
and
thing
then the same
with
form.
Oh, sorry. No, I was going to say the same thing happened with the space race, where we had so many technological advancements that occurred because of our attempts to like get to the moon. Like the MRI machine would not exist if it were not for us trying to get to the moon.
Velcroing tank, baby. Two of the best things that came from the space race. I still Velcro my shoes.
Yeah, but there's loads more. There's like from cameras to commercial airplanes to roads to, I think, cars to a lesser extent. Basically, any kind of technology we have today is some kind of outcome of military spending. Yeah. It's actually really depressing.
Volkswagen in Germany, right?
Yeah, Hitler's car,
so
pretty much.
You've just convinced me that the Republican overspending on the military is a good thing. Cool. Yeah.
Well, I'd say we could make this much more efficient by just spending it on just making people's lives better.
If you want a better smartphone, vote Trump.
Well, I think it just points to the fact that the idea of capitalism that's constantly pitched to us, especially in the States, is essentially a collective hallucination. Like, it does not exist in the way that anyone thinks that it does. And what it does is that it creates an oligarchy. It doesn't create any sort of egalitarian system, so that the rich people keep getting richer and get more power. And then, like you said, the government is behind so many advancements that these companies actually aren't, but everyone just believes that this system, as it's pitched to us, is real because it's to our benefit. Because it's like that old joke that the problem with capitalism is that every poor person thinks that they're a momentarily embarrassed millionaire. Everyone thinks that they can be that millionaire, and that's why you buy into it. It's like, no, I'll get all that stuff too one day.
Why don't we want taxes on people making over $400,000? Because one day I will make over $400,000.
And guess what? You're not.
I'm not. I will never make over 400. I won't make over $100,000 a year, let alone 4.
You missed the boat.
I missed it, dude. That boat sailed a long time ago. But Paul, kind of to your point, one of the things I've heard it called is actually existing neoliberalism, right? Because we have this idea of how democracy works, how capitalism works. But like here in the United States, it's crony capitalism. Like if I am a manufacturing company, I can go to, X state, go get in crazy tax incentives, get free property, get, free labor, essentially.
Yeah, and Amazon was busted the most obviously here, right? Because they were 100%. Fishing from state to state. And I think Reply All or This American Life did a brilliant podcast on just how transparently they were lying. I think Qualcomm have done it as well, offering the same deal to 4 states simultaneously at the same point, offering loads of jobs, demanding loads of tax breaks, delivering none of the above, right? And I think
and it becomes a race to the bottom, right? Who can give X corporation the most stuff for them to come, and then there's no benefit at all to those jobs coming. I mean, we have here in South Carolina, we have Boeing, we have BMW, we have Volvo. It's going to take 50 to 100 years for the benefits to finally accrue to the state for them being here. And by that time, they're going to move somewhere else to get more benefits. And so this whole idea of, and then what do they do, right?
Can I say, guys, this attempt to steelman capitalism isn't going very well.
It's going terribly.
Is it not? Come on, John, you've been thoughtful. Come on, help us out here.
Well, I was just thinking, if we're not going to be, if there's confusion about the term capitalism, the definition of capitalism, what do we call what we've had in the West? Or what are we talking about when we're trying to describe the system? And I guess neoliberalism is what you mentioned, Chris, and that's kind of the term that I go with because capitalism is more vague. But
corporatism is another one I've heard.
Corporatism, but then that's the problem with that is that there's the old theories of corporatism which predate the modern usage of the term corporatism, where you're referring to the state and the nation as a body, a corporation, versus now where corporate entities have actually captured the levers of power. So yeah, I think mainly the defining factor here is that is just that private entities and private interests are able to capture the levers of power indirectly, versus a command economy or some other more heavily directed economy of.
Well, in the United States, we don't call it bribery, we call it lobbying.
Right.
So just to be clear then, are we in fact saying that we're not against democracy or capitalism? We just don't think that's actually what we're currently living in.
Why do you combine capitalism and democracy?
I don't. Let's separate them. But the problem is,
you're right.
But they're not separated right now. So so money has an effect on power. So okay, let's keep democracy out of it for now. Because money always comes first. Is our point, in fact, that free market capitalism isn't a bad idea? It's just not something we've tried yet? Is it nice in theory?
Well,
true capitalism has not yet been tried.
Where it was tried, and it was an absolute disaster. Like there were about, I think the one case where it actually really existed was when the UK still like controlled about a third of the world. When they went to Africa, when they went to Southeast Asia, those guys had free market capitalism. There was no state whatsoever. They just happened to have like a really strong exporting nation somewhere far away that just completely overwhelmed the entire local industry. And that was just about the only time we actually had complete free market because the government was destroyed by the British.
I think you've made your case. Sounds brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, Boris Johnson is still for it. That's the funny part.
Those were the days when one man could literally own a country in Africa.
Yeah, Cecil Rhodes.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. And the current Prime Minister of the UK, he's still, like, he wrote a column, I think a few years ago, where he's still like, yeah, those were good days. That's when Africa was still producing the right kind of cotton and made all the money. So we should still have control there. That's like the literal Prime Minister.
Egyptian cotton is very soft, very high thread count, which I personally need. I have very sensitive skin, so it's nice to have a high thread count.
See, and that's the beauty of capitalism is the competition.
That's the beauty of capitalism.
Find your market and you give them high thread count sheets.
So this is my problem. It's easy to criticize the system. My issue is what we replace it with. And I'm pretty sure, for one, when the communist revolution comes, it won't be green. I don't particularly believe that. And all the arguments I've heard for replacing this system with another hinge on and the next people who somehow rise to power, even though every person that's ever rise to power in the history of the world has been a little shit, but we hope the people that rise to power next are going to be lovely and not have any of the flaws of all the other systems.
Okay, it's actually quite straightforward. So let's say in a slight change to the system to make it significantly better, you could actually achieve that super easily. And it's not even that many changes. I guess the most important one is to make voting insanely easier. They just get like an app on your phone, you get a message every couple of years that, do you want to vote for guy A, guy C?
More people should be voting on policy than American Idol.
Yes, but I think we're all agreed just imagine hypothetically that right now for voting, you have to go to like a random booth, possibly wait a couple of hours for like a thing that takes effectively a couple
Even
of
before
minutes.
that happens, you have to apply and have a house.
I know.
And get the
Why isn't everybody automatically enrolled? And like that voting just works on every system. Like you play on a PlayStation, you get a short message. Do you want to vote for this guy or this guy? Then you voted. The US can send a guy to the moon. They can land like a thing on an asteroid 10 million miles away. But they can't figure out to make voting
they
easy.
have. American Idol's done it. You just ask that team to make the app.
I haven't been inside of a bank in a decade. Like, have not stepped a foot inside of a bank, but I can withdraw money, I can send money, I can do everything that my bank does with my iPhone.
I don't know where my checkbook is, to be completely honest. I've never had to use it. I've only ever paid for anything digitally or the credit card.
Yeah, but this is already the first thing that if you get like 95% participation, the Republicans would never win. I mean, the Republicans already can't win a popular vote anymore. But if you had like 30% higher participation, then you just would, like, the only reason all these old guys win is because voter turnout among young people in particular is so low.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's what Bernie Sanders hoped for, that young people would turn out a lot more than they did, which they sadly did not. But just having more people vote would already change it massively. And why isn't it easier to vote? It's kind of insane when you think about it.
I think the thing, though, is that it's not a bug, it's a feature. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, our system is designed to be shitty and to decrease turnout. Like, that's why so many states force you to have like a very valid reason, or at least they did until COVID, some still do, to vote absentee. So to even vote by mail, you have to give them a reason, as opposed to I just want to vote by mail. I mean, there are states in America that do have universal mail-in ballots where they send everyone a ballot, and every state could do that, but they don't want to, because like you said, it's better for one particular party to have low turnout.
Yeah, it's better for both parties, essentially.
Right. Well, and I was going to say, let's not just pretend this is completely the Republicans' fault, because you go to Democratic strongholds. I mean, I live in one in South Carolina. It is a deep, deep ocean of blue in a sea of red. And we still have people waiting 8 hours to vote. I mean, the Democrats completely control the voting. It's a county.
Let's be clear. It's hard to believe that the candidates that would have been chosen, Hillary Clinton and Biden, would be the case if the Democratic Party was 4 times the size and there were a lot more people voting in that process.
No, but it's not about expanding. So think of right now, the actual halfway reasonable people in the US political system, like AOC, Ilhan Omar, people like that. They defeated old people because of the youth turnout effectively.
Right.
And now imagine that every single district has 90% young people turning out to vote. All of a sudden, all these really old guys that are like in their 90s and still somehow senators or just any kind of politician, they would all go down really fast. The only reason all of them are still around is because only old people basically vote because they have all the time. And that's why they're still in power.
Yeah, and
there's only like one really
more
simple change.
They've got more skin in the game as well at the in the latter years of your life. You've got money invested in the stock market. You care about things that young people don't care about. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, how many millennials own property? It's like 5%.
Yeah, this is something I was saying. It's like people, and it's funny, still talk about millennials like they're children, but like the average age is what?
We're in our 30s.
30 something. You're like, and literally, if you look at it, it's really sad that we have a quarter of the money that the last generation did at this age. A quarter.
Right.
That is how poorly the economy's performing.
And when you think about it too, I mean, people would always give millennials shit for being lazy, but that's clearly not what's happening because we work more hours than our parents did. We get paid less and we're better educated. Why are we poorer? Why are we
avocados?
Yeah, the avocado toast. It's like, bitch, you bought
avocado sandwiches that are doing it.
I buy a latte. You bought a $300,000 house when you were 5 years younger than me,
without a college degree.
Yeah, without a college.
That looks
you
like
actually have an avocado sandwich right now, Daniel.
John, are you actually eating an avocado toast?
Yeah.
You're ruining the economy, John. Stop it.
God.
It's really good, guys.
You're why we're poor.
It's really good. I will not own a home just to eat avocado toast every Saturday for brunch.
We also had 2 back-to-back recessions, although the second one's still pending. But I have a real feeling, and we alluded to this earlier, that during the last recession, what really should have happened is that we nationalized the banks, but instead we privatized the government, and that really bothered me quite a lot.
I like that turn of phrase. I'm going to steal that at some point. Good syntax.
Yeah, but I think we can actually talk about that, like how to change the system ever so slightly to actually make it halfway decent.
Lead us to the promised land of optimism, Christian, please.
Yes. I mean, okay, so just make voting insanely easy. That you can just, you can voting while taking a shit, basically. It just takes you 2 seconds on your smartphone, and that's it. Right. Already, we get rid of so many people. Then I guess number 2 would be to limit term limits for basically any politician. Let's say you can be a politician for, let's make it generous, 20 years maximum. That's still like a crazy long time.
Then,
but then
could we ban the revolving door though? Because if you serve a short term and then you go work for an evil industry,
that as well. Sure.
Fucked, right?
Yeah, I think we solved that one of our last episodes. Mandatory execution after you're done, so that you have to really want to serve society and there's no benefits.
Like you want to be in civic service because you're going to give your 20 years and then we kill you.
Ernest Christian was trying so hard.
Sorry, we'll go back to Sorry.
And then we kill your ass. Like there is no revolving door.
Or Thunderdome. You may get out, but we're not.
Thunderdome.
Sure,
We'll do Thunderdome.
Wouldn't that lead to just having lots of 80-year-olds just fighting each other to death?
I would pay to see that.
Yes.
I mean, that's what has to happen.
Absolutely.
Sorry, please continue, Christian.
I would love to see Nancy Pelosi in a death match with like Chuck Schumer, just like 2 Democrats enter, 1 Democrat leaves.
And even if it's not like a death match, just like a WWE brawl of some sort would be fun. But
the broken hip that would happen would lead to their eventual death. So
Christian.
Anyways,
please,
Christian.
Sorry. We promise it definitely won't happen again. Scouts.
Oh, not gonna happen.
No, I'm trying to imagine now, like two 90-year-olds nearly trying to fight, and what would they actually do? Like some slight push, I think. And then
It's
one
going
would
to be
die.
the image for this episode, by the way.
Yeah, has to be. Both
But
of
yeah.
them with walkers, just like in the middle of a death match ring.
All right.
But okay, I think the one policy that, or like, it's not a policy, it's like a massive change in society. But this is what Corbyn, a couple of years in the UK, proposed as a policy, that every worker has part in the company they are working in. So if you
Yes.
work for, let's say, GM, you own a tiny part of GM.
Right.
And basically the long-term plan would be you, in the long run, get completely rid of any kind of shareholder, and the people that
Right.
work at the company, they start to own it. And then you would very easily get to the state where if you want to be a manager or a CEO or any person in charge, you have to be elected by the people that work at these companies.
Yes.
And
I love
then
that
you
one.
would get rid of so many problems. You would get rid of corporate lobbying. You would get rid of underpaid workers. Minimum wage would be basically solved. It's, just democratize the economy. And that's basically socialism.
Get rid of really
it was the
shitty
old
managers.
1940s idea, right? It was your stakeholders are your stockholders. Like it was this idea of the, you're a part of the corporate family, right? Like I remember my grandfather worked for the same company for 40 years. I haven't worked for the same company for more than 2. And so,
You should have taken some advice from your granddad, though. Clearly, he had better employable skills than you.
Oh, well, that goes without saying. He was an accountant, so he definitely was way more employable than I will ever be.
And it's interesting too, because I've had this conversation with folks before, and I think that the trap that a lot of people get into is the thought that people who run companies are competent and know what they're doing, so that they somehow earned that position, right? And it's the whole lie of the capitalist system of no, you earn what you get. But when you start to realize how people get their jobs and how they get their positions and how completely unqualified or incompetent they actually are at the thing that they're doing, it's the same thing with politicians, right? Like they're not any smarter than you. Just because Nancy Pelosi says something does not make it a fact. And just because your boss or your CEO says something doesn't make them any good at their job. So it would be so much better to have people who actually have their employees in mind to get the job and not just their shareholders and increasing their company's overall value than increasing their workers' livelihood.
I think.
Well, Jared Kushner and Hunter Biden are 2 great examples of that, right? Like these guys just failed upwards.
Oh, yeah.
I think I started realizing it when I was looking into it. So I don't think there's more than 2 CEOs in the Fortune 500 that are shorter than 6 foot.
Is that true?
Is that right?
And when you realize that, you're like, well, okay, maybe all tall people are genetically superior. Or maybe they're just arbitrarily picking people, and that's kind of the random guide they've gone with.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same that handsome people
like
earn more.
Right.
Like, if you have a pretty face, you objectively earn more money.
Yeah.
And it's just insane.
Well, so is the argument then that more democracy is then what would fix capitalism? Because aren't we also seeing a lot of the issues?
Well, more democracy would abolish capitalism, effectively.
Right.
But,
So
I mean,
once
this
if you get away from private ownership of shares in companies, that is getting away from the capitalist principle and into the socialist principle.
Right.
I was going to say private ownership entirely.
Yeah, but this is actually, I think, a really good topic that, okay, so we talked about nobody understands or defines what capitalism is. For socialism, it's even worse, especially in the US.
But before we do that, I just want to wrap up this because I love it. And I've been having a theory, and then we'll talk about definitions of socialism and move on. But
is it a Churchill thing again, Cookie?
No, oh my God. I'll invite you guys to the group chat later, but what people don't realize is that there's every former guest we've ever had on the podcast, I invite into a group chat. And what I say is everyone's got strong opinions on something, and everyone's triggered by something. And it's my job to just be like the abusive father that equally offends everyone. So anytime someone mentions an offensive topic that triggers everyone else, I just have to make sure everyone else is equally insulted so we can move on. So I may have triggered Christian by implying that Karl Marx was more racist than Winston Churchill.
Okay.
I was very triggered.
It was, and this is my problem. This is why I am a
I had to sit in the safe
homosexual
space for
of
like
a
2
cunt.
days.
It was a perfectly targeted attack. I knew exactly what to say to you to make you furious. And I loved it. But anyway, rolling it back. Let's get our sensible faces on here. I've been looking into this, and I think very often it gets trapped in this chat of capitalism versus communism. And I think I have a solution that we're so close to that doesn't require, as Christian's saying, like a big step, a massive change. And I think we're really close to it as well, because some countries are already doing this. So it's the idea of nationalizing banks and finance. So you don't necessarily have to have governments break up companies and tell them how to set up their management boards and structures, but you just have a bank that you can apply to that isn't also shareholder owned by a bunch of corporate dickheads. And the idea that you can, like, a company can get a loan, because as we've alluded to with all the iPhone and all the technology that's come from this thing, I think the whole realm of finance is people making loads of money, because in a rising tide helps everyone in the economy. And if you just had like a national bank that would lend money to half decent ideas, it would make a profit. Like, just simply, this is why these idiots in finance make so much money, is because if you bet on any random thing, you'll probably make a profit overall, right?
Yeah, and so much of what they do is not actually producing anything either. It's just moving money around and making your money make more money for you without actually adding any value to society or even your own corporation.
And where you struggle is the old boys network, and like the guy that works at the bank who says yes or no to the loan. His dad worked with the dad of the guy that's starting the company. And I think if you just had like and I know a few countries do this. So I know Switzerland does it. And it's my understanding that Germany has a bank is it KfW?
Germany has lots of local banks. There's not one bank that does it all. Like, there's no national German bank, but you have lots of local German banks that are like partly intertwined with like any local regional state. But yeah, that would be a way. But it's actually a really good segue to talking about socialism, because this is
our sponsor for the podcast, by the way. Socialism.
Yeah, yeah, socialism.
Okay, but here's, I guess, one thing I really hated about the Bernie Sanders campaign. That Bernie Sanders was
controversial.
No, I'm not. I'm angry at Bernie right now, so I want to hear this. I need more fuel for my fire.
So I think the main, I mean, it's very hard. Like, Bernie Sanders is much better organized than I could ever be. But I think the one thing I thought was a bad way to go on is that he called himself a democratic socialist. Because first of all, that point is entirely like it's, what's the word? Democratic and socialism in all practical purposes mean the same thing. Socialism just means democracy in the economy. That's all that socialism means at the end of the day.
Interesting.
And only because a few centuries or a century of propaganda really fucked this up.
Well, didn't you think that's what he was going for, though? He knew it was the stick they were going to beat him with. So he embraced
Bernie
it.
Sanders' main policy proposal should have been, we want to democratize the US. We want to democratize the economy. We want to democratize government. We want to just democratize everything, because democracy is an inherent American value.
Oh, that would have been even better. And then put some eagles and flags in the
exactly.
background.
And then, like, don't call it Medicare for all, call it like Patriot Care. And like get all the Republican shitheads.
Yes.
Would have worked so well.
Yeah. Patriot Care. Like that. That's sexy.
Every bill ever should be called Jesus Loves the Troops. The Jesus Loves the Troops Act Volume 15.
Couldn't you even pitch that as like democratic capitalist in a way? If you're just trying to go pure
even that.
propaganda.
Call it democratic capitalist. Would have worked even better. Like, we just don't change anything. We just make it slightly more democratic. And all of a sudden, the whole thing of like, oh, he's socialist. It's like, we just want like a bit more democracy. What's wrong with that? And that would have been a way better wing. And this is like the thing that, like, any kind of right of Bernie Sanders could attack him with that, oh, you want to give government powers to everybody. You want to make the government expand massively more.
Yeah, no, not the
When
government.
Bernie Sanders didn't want to do
people.
any of that, really. Like, he wanted to rework how government works to make it better. I mean, he wanted to... I mean, if you think of it in terms of power structures, that right now in the US, you have the entire health system is like one giant private company, really corrupt complex. And Bernie Sanders will take all of that, make it a government function, which would expand the government, but also make it more democratic, that you have actual control over how all of the system works. And this is what basically socialism in the basic sense is all about, that you have more democracy in the workplace. And you can make this way more complex. And like, there are lots of like left-wing people with way too much time that create way too many theories around this. But all that socialism really means is that you want to have democracy in all levels of society. That's all it is, and you basically can't argue against it unless you're a completely right-wing maniac.
Holy shit, Christian, you just blew my mind. I am mind blown right now. That was awesome.
That was fucking efficient. And like you say, there's so many arguments that happen on the left. In preparation for this episode, I just watched a 3-hour video debating whether Trump is a fascist as defined by Umberto Eco or a fascist as defined by Trotsky, and why that distinction is important. And it's not. It's fucking not.
Right.
Oh, no.
You're right. We just need more freedom. Well, not more freedom, because that's the libertarian hack, right?
No, also, socialism is for freedom. That's like the thing.
Right.
Whoa, you're about to blow my mind, bro. Hit me. Why is socialism
No, this is
more
what
free
Hayek
than
actually...
libertarianism?
Okay, you guys all know Hayek, right?
Oh,
the original, like,
Salma
right-wing...
Hayek, the best
the road to serfdom.
Yes, that guy. There's actually a quote from that. He's really proud that libertarians, or like the left-wing libertarians, stole the term liberty or freedom from the socialists. Because if you look at 100 years ago, the guys that actually wanted freedom for everybody were the socialists, because back then everybody just worked 16 hours a day.
Sorry, did you mean left-wing
had no rights? You were beaten up by the police if you spoke up.
Point of contact. Did you mean left-wing libertarian or right-wing libertarian?
There's only one kind of proper libertarian is left-wing.
That's the only kind that matters. Okay.
Yes. I mean, think about it, that if you have actual libertarians and you end up with giant corporations, then you don't have freedom, because if you don't work for some guy that exploits you horribly, then you starve. So there's no freedom. And only under socialism do you actually have a proper freedom where you have guaranteed food, you have guaranteed housing. You don't have to worry that you starve in the streets.
Don't call it socialism, only under democracy and freedom. We're rebranding it, remember? It's no longer socialism, it's democracy, democracy.
This is patriotic capitalism. That's what we're calling it.
Bald eagle capitalism, baby. We got this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Eagle soars, rock, flag, and eagle, baby.
Pretty much.
Christian, I love it. Do you have anything else that we could quickly tweet?
Yes, I have the best argument. The best argument for socialism. Are you ready?
Go.
Women had way more orgasms.
I saw something about this. Go deeper into
not
this.
What I was expecting.
That's what she said.
Yeah. I saw something about
We got to unpack.
So there's an actual book about it. I can't remember the title right now, but there's a lady, she looked at, I think the Soviet Union during the Cold War, and looked at the private lives of women. And she found that those women had way more agency than they had in the US at the time.
Right.
Because they always had a job. They could divorce their shitty husband and just have a better sex life as a consequence. And because of that, Soviet women had a lot more sex than Western women had. And also better sex. So if you want better sex, go socialist.
Interesting. Well, I feel like there's a
patriotic capitalist.
Yeah. I feel like there's a big point too there about just like general liberation of people, where you're constantly told that you need to be like subservient to the man. You're never going to like really do whatever you like, what you want or how you want things. So like it makes sense that would apply both to like society or even in the bedroom, you know?
Yeah, and evolutionary psychology perspective here, if you look at the function of the orgasm, right? Especially for women, it increases the chance of conception.
Right.
And it sort of makes sense, like evolutionary biologists have been sort of scratching their head, like tells you a lot about academics in the 60s. They're like, Why is it so hard to make a woman come? And you're like, oh God, oh guys, oh bless you. I fear it's too late to give them pointers at this point. But if you look at it, like the argument is that it's designed as a measure of empathy and compassion, right? Like this is what oh God, I'm scared to go down this rabbit hole. But you know who I'm talking about, the incels, the Proud Boys,
right?
The pickup artists, these weird guys that are just like, might is right, women want to Chad. And you're like, that's not true. And although everyone appreciates, a healthy, in-shape body, like obviously if you're empathetic, understand, care how the other person feels, like actually give a shit, they're more likely to have a good time.
The dad bod is killing it right now.
Yep. And what do dads have? Empathy, okay, for their children.
Dad bod's killing it. But I mean, Cookie, on your point, what's the big thing in like pickup artistries and incels? It's negging, right? And that's giving somebody negative attributes in order to pick them up.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that it intersects with like right-wing fascism, capitalism, because it's all the talk of marketing, right? Make them feel insecure, make them feel not good enough versus, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Give them whatever they want, give them what they need, like make them happy.
Right.
I mean, it's also a tactic used by a lot of the major cult leaders where you constantly insult your followers and tell them they're not doing enough, not good enough, and then they're constantly trying to get your acceptance and your love. So it's just a psychological abuse thing. It's withholding and forcing them to keep working harder, which in a way is what our current economic system does in my own mind, where if you're not rich enough or don't have enough money, you just got to work harder, right? It's your own fault. You can do it.
So it's just a big cult that we're in.
We're in one massive cult.
So wait, was Hillary Clinton negging all the Trump supporters when she called them a basket of deplorables? It kind of backfired a little.
Backfired. They
didn't pick them up.
They were too confident.
As I've always said.
Well, because why does that shit work though? It's a lack of competence and a lack of self-worth. So when you're surrounded by a society that's constantly telling women that they don't have the same worth as a man, or can't get paid the same, like it's
not just women that are told they're worthless, right? Like we're all told it's not good enough. Like you need more. You buy the next thing. Like be better, work harder, get that pay rise. Keeping up with the Kardashians. Right?
We got a lot of layers to it.
Yeah. You got a 6-pack abs? Well, you don't have 8-pack abs? I don't have any abs, so.
Well,
that dad bod is coming in clutch, baby, always.
But how's your gut health? Do you have enough probiotics?
Oh, is this you negging me?
Just asking, man.
Men that
Do I need to go buy some yogurt now? Is that what you're telling me?
Men that neg are less likely to cause an orgasm. Just a warning.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I need to go an ad for Chobani right now.
Yeah, I'm actually starting a yogurt empire, so I'm trying to make you feel as bad as possible so you buy my shit.
Yeah. Shit, my gut health is bad.
Gut negging.
Yeah, gut negging. Good night. So, all right. So anyways, so we know what capitalism is. We know what socialism is. The U.S. is fucked. So what's going on in Europe right now? That's what I want. I'm tired of the United States. I am so.
No. Have you not noticed television? There's a trend where we like to go to America and shit on your politics. We don't want to talk about our politics. That's embarrassing.
Real quick.
I need some education as an American. I'm American centric. I want to be Eurocentric. I am tired of America.
Christian, I'll let you
Paul?
flip the coin. Do you want to talk about Germany or England?
Do I have a bowl of shit or 2 bowls of
Wait,
shit?
which country do you want to talk about in Europe?
I just kind of what's going on with the whole European experiment.
Well, this is fun. So you're going to divide me and Christian hard right now if you start talking about the EU and Brexit. Christian, I'll give you a choice. What do you want to talk about? Germany, the EU, or Britain?
Germany's too boring. Basically, Germany's
functional
politics
countries.
are.
Damn it, they're boring.
Like
No. Okay, just to summarize Germany's politics.
What's that?
So Germany, politic-wise, is basically think of in the US if the Republicans, Democrats, when they were both still like more neoliberal, just sat down together and was like, we're going to make one big government for the next 20 years and then not change a single thing for that entire time.
Right.
That's the entire Merkel period.
Right.
And nothing really happened in Germany because there's like one big government that nobody can do anything about it.
What happens after Merkel?
Good question. She's still in power and she is not going to run next year in the German elections.
Right.
So the Conservative Party have to find some other guy, but nobody's nearly as popular as she is.
Right.
But yeah,
it'll probably be the
Germany
end of the coalition, right?
Yeah. So right now it's still like that. The two biggest parties just formed a coalition to just run the country with like 80% of the votes or something.
Right.
But yeah, this basically destroyed the major left-wing party in Germany over the last 10 years. They went from getting like 40-something% and now they're at like 10. They just basically got destroyed.
Holy shit.
Yeah. That's what Merkel
so
does.
Do you think do they come back into power after Merkel leaves or are they just functionally screwed?
Okay. So basically in Germany is that the entire country on the whole became much richer over the last 10 years because it basically fucks over the rest of Europe.
Right.
And as a consequence, you don't really have a poor people kind of movement. It's all become like much more bourgeois, if you want to call it that.
Right.
And so the only two parties that have any chance of power are either the Conservatives that still get like 30-something% of the vote, or you get the Green Party that started off as like really left wing, but then all the guys that founded it became old and leaned further and further to the right. And now they are basically Conservative Party with like slightly more greenish policies.
Right.
But that's about it. And those are
so
the only
they're like our Democrats, where it's like maybe in the 60s they were kind of revolutionary, but like now it's just kind of, you know, we want to keep the boat sailing.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. The entirety, and like the really depressing thing is the entirety of the German political spectrum, from like the left-wing party to the Greens to the Conservatives, is all basically Obama.
Right. Right.
And so yeah, like there's no movement going on.
Pre-90s American politics, like before Newt Gingrich came and started wrecking shit.
Yeah, which also makes it really boring. Besides, if you want to talk about it, what Germany does to Greece and Southern Europe. Because that shit's depressing. But besides that, it's just really boring.
Right. So this is my beef, man. Like, and it's my beef with the EU in general. And have you heard of the term Lexit? So it was the left-wing people that were against the EU and against the European Central Bank, and against how austerity was enforced on other countries as economic imperialism.
Yeah.
And it's why me and Christian are about to agree on nothing and have a massive falling out.
Well, I mean, the EU
I'm actually not sure what you're going to say. I'm really interested now.
It was the IMF and World Bankification of Europe, right?
I mean, that was always the point of the European Union, to be honest.
Right. Yeah.
So
right.
I think that's another thing, that the European Union, as a propaganda term, thought about itself of like, oh yeah, we create peace in Europe. We make sure that there's no more Second World War thing going on.
Yeah.
All of that complete bullshit. Has nothing to do with any of that. What the European Union originally was supposed to do was rebuild German, French, and Italian industries, because after World War II, all of this was just completely destroyed. And they just
wanted the coal and steel union at first, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's how it started. And what it basically was we create some local monopolies in each of these countries and make sure they get a lot of money to rebuild their local industries. That was the entire point of it. And from there, it just became more and more of this kind of union to make sure that the big corporations make more and more money within Europe. But along with that, to justify it, they basically just build like some social policies so that you can migrate from one country to another. they imposed like some very weak left-wing, like let's say environmental standards or food security standards. But all of that is always on top of, if your government spends more than 3% of the deficit or of the GDP, then you get massive penalties. And I think Varoufakis, the former Greek finance minister, talked about it in one city in, I think it was in Barcelona. They basically wanted to build a refugee camp for just the poorest people coming there. And the European Union went in there and was like, yeah, no, too expensive, fuck off. And then basically that's how people nowadays in Europe see the European Union, of like these really distant guys, really far away, that just tell you, just shut up and pay taxes and don't get anything nice. And that's why people hate the European Union. And I can see why. It sucks.
I thought we would disagree harder on this, but yes, like, and my main point of this is that I talk to too many people who say either you're for the EU or you're a racist Nazi, and I'm like, that's why you guys lost that referendum. That's a terrible argument that no one has ever been persuaded by ever.
Well, it was the same thing that, you know, I really do compare Brexit to Trump a lot of the time.
Yes,
I think it was a very similar phenomenon.
Not for the same reasons, because I do think I understand the feeling for national sovereignty. So the interesting thing I always put to people is like, Scotland wants to be independent from the UK. And
they should be.
Well, there you go. For good reason. Fair enough, right? Like, if people want that, if people want to go, like, it's a divorce, right? If people want to go their own way, I'm like, look, and here's the funny thing, like, Scotland had a referendum on it. They narrowly voted to stay in the Union, partly because of fear-mongering done by the then Scottish Prime Minister of the UK. But, you know, like, they're always pushing now for a second referendum, and I'm arguing with Scottish people. I'm like, well, two things. Number one, I think you'd be surprised how many English people would be like, yeah, fine, go. Like, I understand why the government doesn't want it, because it'd be a fucking nightmare. Look how they're struggling to get Brexit done. Can you imagine if that was a hard border? And this is what boils my brain, is the people that are like, Scotland should leave England because Brexit's a bad idea. And you're like, okay, like, how easy do you think that border will be to disentangle? Because I imagine they're quite closely entwined, those economies.
Right.
Because it's an invisible border, right? Like, it's like in between state lines. It is like that. We've been one country for hundreds of years. So,
I guess counter argument, Cookie. Let's say right now the argument you make is that we can't do this democratic decision because it's going to be difficult.
No, not at all. Like, I think it's a logical fallacy they're making. Like, that Brexit's a bad idea, but Skexit's a great idea. But I would also say that not every decision should be made by what makes us the most money. And this is my problem with the Remainers as well. And it's the same with the Trump thing. This is best for the economy. Economists say this, we should do this for the money. And most poor working class people are like, I don't give a fuck about your economy. That's not why I'm voting. The reason why Scotland will leave the UK isn't because financially they'd be 2% richer in their GDP if they stayed. It's a hard decision. And I respect that. I don't think every decision should be made according to what an economist says would be best for the stock market. I'm entirely sympathetic to people like, it may be the most, you know, economical thing for us to fucking let America or China tell us what to do. But most people don't want to be governed that way. So fair enough.
So what do you see as the solve to the issues with the European Union right now? Is it to attempt to destroy it in some way? Is there a reformation that you have in mind that would be able to fix those problems?
Destroy.
Add some more of that patriotic capitalism to it.
Yeah, there we
Come
go.
on.
I'll let Chris go because his answer will probably be more considered and nuanced than mine. So mine will be quick and I'll go first. I think they're already doing pretty well. If you look at how well they're negotiating Brexit, they're very good at this. They're phenomenally good at diplomacy, negotiations, and Britain is going to be made to regret it, be embarrassed, and every other country in Europe that was looking at Britain and going, yeah, that looks good, maybe us next, will now be like, oh,
not going to do it.
That's an awkward divorce. Like, It is like when you divorce someone, you want a divorce with benefits, right? Like, you suddenly realize, at the time you're like, yeah, I'm going to be free, get rid of that ball and chain. And then after a few months, you're like, oh my God, now I'm having to pay for her house.
Yeah. 50% of the income going right out the window.
Yeah, divorce sucks balls, man. Oh my God. And I think the EU's done a brilliant job at stemming that tide. I don't think any other country's looking now to join that queue. No. But anyway, Christian.
Well, that was entirely. What do you want to talk about? The Brexit negotiations or the European Union?
How the EU can fix itself later.
We got a lot of the critiques of the EU, but what's the improved system that you see?
Okay, but yeah, I guess to Cookie's point, I think I find it very difficult to tell what's actually going on. So on the one side, the British government is completely incompetent. They're basically the British version of Donald Trump, just useless.
I think North Korean diplomacy would describe our position right now better. We're like, oh, we're going to fuck ourselves up so badly, it would fuck you up too. We're going to nuke ourselves.
Wait a minute. You're telling me Bojo is incompetent?
I think Bojack Horseman would be a better leader at this point.
Bojo is incompetent? I thought he did the bikes. I thought it was the Bojo bikes.
You know about the fucking bikes. That's amazing.
Oh, it was the Bojo bikes. I thought he was a good guy. He was like flying around on a...
It'll be on his tombstone. It'll be like the bikes and
this is like... You know, Donald Trump 20 years ago was a Democrat?
Yeah.
That's kind of the same thing. Then when Boris Johnson was mayor of London, he was liberal. Now he's conservative. Or now he's right-wing. But yeah, on the other side of the European Union, if the European Union wants to get shit done, they get shit done. So I think this happened in the 2008 crisis, when all the big banks in Europe collapsed, and Europe had to figure out a way to stabilize the system. So what these guys did was they declared the entire financial crisis an environmental, or an, what's the word? They basically considered it like
crisis, yeah.
No, like a natural crisis, I think is the word they used. So there's one law in the European Union that states can only intervene in other states financially if under no circumstances except for like natural disasters. So they basically reframed the entire financial crisis as a natural disaster in order for France and Germany to step into Greece and stabilize the German and French banks that invested massive amounts of money there. And you see, like, if the European Union really wants to get something done, they can get something done. And like right now, we talk about some fishing rights and state subsidies. Who gives a shit, really? The main reason the European Union...
That, like, fishing is one of those issues, I'm sure you have it in America, that's worth 0.001% of the economy, but it's just become the hill that the Conservatives have chosen to die on, and it represents British sovereignty. So but you're not allowed to go fishing off our rocks. Fuck off. Like that.
No. My argument is that the European Union definitely could find some middle ground if they really wanted to, but they have a massive incentive to not do that, because if the UK actually leaves it halfway without a disaster, then you have people in France going like, yeah, the European Union fucks us as well. We want to leave too if this works. And then you have all of Southern Europe also wanting to leave.
And like and every pyramid scheme, when people start leaving, it's not good for business.
No.
Yes, exactly. And then like, if the European Union collapsed, Germany would collapse as a whole, because Germany relies on export. And the reason German export works so well is because the German currency is massively undervalued, because they share the same currency with like really poor states in Southern Europe.
Right.
And basically what Germany does to like maintain their trade surplus that makes Germany really rich is they're like a currency cheater, what China does as well. That they just undervalue their currency and sell a ton of stuff. And that works incredibly well. And this only works because of the European Union. And so they have a massive incentive to just fuck the UK really hard.
Yeah,
what they actually do, I have no idea.
Which is why when people say, like, I don't believe this serves me or benefits me, like, you know, maybe they're wrong, but that's okay. Like, it was always meant to be an economic union that was democratically based.
It was never supposed to be democratically based.
Well, you had to vote to join, right?
No.
Yeah, well, I don't know if Germany did, but yeah, a lot of countries voted to join an economic union, and then kind of sneakily it became a political union as well. And yeah, I sympathize with people that are like, yeah, sorry, I'm done. The same as I will miss the Scottish when they go, But if they gave a referendum to England right now, I reckon we'd vote with a quite high percentage to let the Scots go, because there's nothing worse than being in a relationship that neither of you wants to be in.
But I think you can make a pretty good argument that the European Union is significantly less democratic than, for example, the US government.
Right.
And you can see it in a couple of different ways. I think the most interesting one is that when the US government has any kind of meeting, they have to take minutes, at least for most of them. And then a couple of years later, they are being released. And because of that, journalists have a field day just talking about what happened in the government a few years ago. That's why we know what happened in the US government around 2008 under Obama.
Right.
The European Union doesn't do any of that. And there was one, you guys know Varoufakis, right? He was the Greek finance minister. Okay, so Varoufakis is an economics professor in Greece. And he used to be the Greek finance minister when the financial crisis was at its height. So he was the guy supposed to negotiate with the European Union. And at some point, he had a meeting with all the finance ministers in the European Union. And there, the German finance minister basically made the quote that national elections cannot change European policy, which, if you think about it, is pretty anti-democratic.
Right.
And they can get away with this kind of shit because they don't have to record their meetings. So what happens in these meetings is whatever, we don't know. And why don't we know? They're our elected representatives, but we don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Well,
why don't we?
There's a 3-peg system in the European Union. This is for our American listeners, because I'm sure none of them know how the European Union actually functions.
Nobody actually does.
Right. That's true. That's true. But like the real seat of power is the Council of Ministers, right? Like that's who actually makes all the decisions for the European Union, right?
I would actually have to look this up because I don't know myself. The European Union is this clusterfuck of different organizations. And I think
the
legally,
European Parliament
you're right,
doesn't make really any decisions, right? It's the Council of Ministers which are all of the prime ministers and presidents of EU countries coming to meet together.
Okay,
right?
So that's the first misconception I'm going to have to disavow you of.
Give it to me, baby.
It's been the general impression that the EU has been Germany, France, the UK, and then depending on the crisis, a 4th or 5th member, kind of getting around and being like, so what's the agenda, guys? Like, correct me if that's your impression's different, Christian, but it's generally seemed to be mostly that. And then they're sort of like, the other smaller countries have a quarter of a vote each.
The reason for that is that Germany and France, or basically Germany, has all the power. Right. That if Germany goes in and is like, yeah, we're doing that. If you have like, let's say Portugal going like, yeah, we're not doing that, then just imagine what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And there can be some cases where they actually have I think there was one election where like some local parliament in some Belgian town actually stopped the entirety of European policy. This can happen sometimes.
And every so often a French farmers union will break everything down.
Sure. Yeah. So it can happen
French
that like
farmers are some of my favorite people. They go nuts.
Oh, they're awesome. I love them.
You have not been stuck in the traffic jams that they cause. They are cunts.
I have. I was in Strasbourg at the time, and all of the farmers came to the European Parliament in their combines and their tractors and were just shooting hay and grain all over the streets. And I was like, what the fuck is this?
They would set fire to cow carcasses as well. Have you heard this?
I couldn't believe it. I was amazed. I was like, we don't have this in America.
Look, the tragedy of the whole thing is, this is what I've always said as not a Brexit voter, but a Brexit apologist, I'd say.
Yeah.
Is that Britain has always been like invited and encouraged to have not the main seat, but it would be equal partners with Germany and France. If it had chosen to get involved more in the EU project, it would have wielded significant power and been able to influence the whole thing in its image. But the problem is, in general, we're an island, Winston Churchill, we don't need Europe, blah, 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 basic bitch xenophobia.
Very.
We've just had to appear standoffish, and it's been political suicide for anyone to get involved in Europe. Even with a good idea, the press has always poorly received it. So the best thing to do is just like say some generally racist, xenophobic things and not get involved in the project, which is why, sadly, we never took advantage of it. We never built it in our image. It never served our purposes. And we're going to leave soon, I guess. It seems like a pretty shitty time to rock the boat, but fuck it.
I mean, yeah, who knows?
While we're on the topic of Europe, I'm interested in what the general sentiment among, I guess, geopolitically minded Europeans is in the context of what we see on our side as American decline, as from world hegemon status.
Like it's gone from up for debate to just, that's a shame. Like people are like, I guess America's becoming a third world country now. It literally isn't even debated anymore. We're like, oh my God, like whoever wins this election, you're all fucked. It
doesn't matter.
It's a debate whether you will descend into outright civil war or just things will be really shitty for a long time and you'll never get anything done politically. And
one bowl of shit or two.
China will continue to embarrass you and take over the world and wield all the soft power that you now fail to do.
So what is the plan from European the states of Europe? What is their plan? Are they going to continue to? Is the goal to try and consolidate as a political bloc?
I shared this video with one of you about how clever China has been buying up European debt, and how therefore small European parties have started, like Portugal and Greece, have started exercising their veto vote. In any vote that happens in the EU against China. Christian, I know you lived in China for a bit. You might know more about this than me.
I mean, full disclosure, I only lived in China to escape German military service. So not because I support the Chinese fucking government.
That's a good enough reason for me.
Yes. I mean, the Chinese government sucks really, really, really hard. They're terrible. And they are...
No. The
horrible.
Official position of the Beyond Binary podcast is that we support our Chinese overlords.
Yeah. Same with Real Politik. Very happy with China.
We love you guys. You guys are brilliant.
Right, so all tankies, right?
Does not look like Winnie the Pooh. I repeat, Xi Jinping does not look like Winnie the Pooh.
But basically what happened is that China started to buy a ton of trading ports all across the world. So, for the last 4 years, they basically just buy lots of little areas all across the world. So this happened in Sri Lanka, in the Philippines, in basically all across Southeast Asia, and everybody...
Of the east coast of Africa.
Yeah, everywhere except India. And they basically just circled around India to isolate that country.
Right.
And now they also start to do the same in Europe, that they start to buy a port in Greece and Portugal, and I think they also bought quite a bit of things in the UK.
Yeah, so you have all these banks imposing austerity, and China's like, would you like a cheap loan?
Yeah, exactly.
And the reason why this works...
off your hands.
Yeah, and the reason all of this works is because Greece and Portugal are just massively fucked by the European Union. And I mean, Greece was in a situation of like, we have literally no money, like I think half of the kids are not getting enough to eat. Everything is generally shit. Nobody's spending money. And then China comes and is like, here's a fuck ton of money with very little what you have to pay back.
Right.
And
no
that's just an
strings
amazing deal for them.
attached.
No strings attached.
And what China's really good at as well is like, there'll be no terms and conditions for 50 years. And you imagine the average European politician being like, sorry, I'm only going to serve another 8 years. And then it's like a job in finance and bunga bunga parties. Like, sold. Fuck it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but the only reason China does so well is because there's no real alternative of like actual like governments doing something halfway nice. And obviously China does it to like get more control. There's like no question about it.
Yeah.
But that's like one of the only countries that still spends sizable amounts of money like elsewhere in the world. But I think I'm not sure if China's actually going to become like, at least in the short term, this massive global superpower. Because China built all of the economic growth on a massive amount of debt.
Yeah.
So when we think about government debt, like obviously the US has a crazy amount and so does China. But the bigger problem for China is that they have a ridiculous amount of private debt. So basically any like privatized, in big quotation marks, Chinese company, they just made all the debts they can make to just produce more. And as a consequence, they all have a ridiculous, like 300% of their own value in debt.
Yeah, unsustainable loan-based debt, right? Which is what everyone's in a death rush to do.
I know. And there is going to be one like point in time where this has to just crumble down or has to like slowly be paid off. And if there's one major crisis where the Chinese economy doesn't grow as fast anymore, there might just be an entire collapse of the Chinese economy. And that would be very interesting.
That's always going to be China's, Achilles heel is their domestic policy. Like they can do everything they can abroad, but at the end of the day, their domestic constituency doesn't like the police state. Look at the Uyghurs. Look at.
That's not their constituency.
What the no. I'm not saying the Uyghurs are their constituency, but I'm just saying, like, I think at the end of the day, they got over 1 billion people who do want more freedoms.
Yeah, and I think they're slightly inoculated from that because they don't have the mess of democracy to handle. Right. But at the same point, they have a growing middle class that have been educated in Europe and America with more and more expectations. Right. They're more and more spoiled. And when shit hits the fan, we'll see how truly loyal they are to party politics or whether cracks start forming.
Yeah, it's a big gamble. But
John,
they're in the part of their economics where things are incrementally better, right? The last generation or the new generation's doing better than the last generation.
I can see a glint of wisdom in John's eyes. We got to let him talk more.
Well, I was just going to say I spent a summer in China as well, and it's not uncommon at all to see luxury cars and the sort of conspicuous consumption that you expect from bourgeois middle class new money types. So, and that was almost 10 years ago, and so that process has continued. So I think you're right. It's interesting to see where their loyalties lie in the coming years.
That sweet materialism, baby. It's so good. So it's so tasty.
I think we're all agreed that all of Chris's suggestions would make the world a better place, and then the world will end anyway because it's stacked like a house of cards, right, based on debt.
Yeah, here.
Yeah, mostly yes.
Possibly.
Because that's the thing, right? None of them will happen. That's what I always say about Joe Biden. Like we can talk about democracy dying and he's saving the soul of America. He will not do what fundamentally needs to be done to save the American experiment.
Well, I do worry that the one thing that gets a country out of debt is a big war.
Yeah.
And there's a historical precedent for that.
Yeah.
And there's also, what's it called? The Thucydian, some Greek term, trap, where a declining empire meets a rising one.
A rising empire. Absolutely.
How likely do we think World War III is?
I think quite unlikely. But I think if it happened, China would lose really hard.
Yes.
Like it's not even... Like if you look at the amount of nuclear weapons of US versus China, US has like 200 times the amount of nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like if there's an actual war, the US goes in there, just nukes every major city, kills, 300 million people in like an afternoon, fucks up the entire climate, but they won.
Do we even go to war with China though? Because if we're talking about Joe Biden being in power with the Democrats, like I'm seeing straight Russia, man. That's just their fixation is Russia. They don't play into the China banter nearly as much as the.
Well, I think we see an increase. I think we see an increase in the proxy war situation. We're already seeing that.
Well, that's what Syria is, right? Like
Syria, Azerbaijan.
That's what Armenia, Azerbaijan. That's what even what's going on, India, China, right, on their border skirmishes. Like I think that's more of a proxy war than a real war. Mm-hmm.
Turkey's trying to start some shit, dude. They want it. They're in.
Yeah.
Erdogan's like,
oh my God. Turkey, bless them. They wanted to be in the EU for so long. They literally waited for 20 years, and we were like, got the old color chart out, and we're like, oh, sorry, guys.
Yeah, just a little too dark.
It's not gonna happen.
Everyone made Erdogan their bitch. I think it was Putin who live streamed him making Erdogan wait in like a waiting room to meet with him for 40 minutes and just like record.
That's why I love the story of Donald Trump sending him a letter, or probably an email in this day, like don't try and be a strong man. And apparently, like he tore that up, threw it in the bin. I don't know if this story is apocryphal. And the very next day invaded Syria and fucked up all the Kurds.
No, I'm pretty sure that one's true. Well, I'm not sure about y'all, but I'm gonna have to wrap up my end at least. My 3-month-old puppy is 3-month-old puppy is not happy with all this talking, and she's not getting any attention.
Bless. Well, guys, I mean, this was really fun. I don't think we solved any of the world's problems, but I enjoyed it nonetheless.
Absolutely.
Ton of fun as always.
Thanks,
man.
guys.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.